Welcome to Liesl's Artistic Studio. Here is the moment you've all been waiting for. We get to start painting these lovely bluebells. Now, last week I went over with you step by step how to draw the outline for this. However, it is also available on my Etsy shop if you want to just skip to the fun of painting. I'll leave links for both the video and the shop in the description of this video. But the fun thing here is that using just this one outline, you can actually paint it in two completely different ways. I had a vote last week on which one people liked best, and this one was the winner. So we'll paint this one today, but don't worry, if you liked the other transparent one better or want to try painting it also, we'll go through that step by step next week. Let's quickly go over the supplies we need to get started. First, we need watercolor paper, watercolor paints, a paper towel, clean water, and some masking fluid. Now for my brushes, I first have an old brush to use with my masking fluid just so I don't risk ruining one of my nicer brushes. But I have put some liquid soap in the bristles to help clean out the fluid of this brush later. Then I have two round Artegria brand brushes, a larger number 10 and a smaller number 6. Then of course I've got my outline drawn on here lightly with a pencil. I'll go ahead and tape my paper down with some artist tape, and as a side note, any of the supplies you see me using today will be listed along with purchasing links in the description of this video. The first thing we need to do before jumping into painting is mask off the bluebell flower so we can more easily put in some background color. So I'll take the fluid and this old brush with soap in the bristles and start applying fluid to the outer edges of the flower head. Now you don't necessarily have to cover the entire flower with this fluid unless it makes it easier for you. I just like to do the edges just to save and stretch out my fluid to last a little bit longer. But again, do whatever is best for you. I will point out also that I'll put this fluid on this top area of the flower as well, but not down the flower stems. And of course, you can paint this picture without masking fluid at all if you don't have any. Either you'll just have to be a little more careful and go around the flowers when painting in the background, or another option is just to not paint in any background color at all. You can totally just paint these flowers and the grass, and it would still be a lovely picture without the background color. Now, this process can take a few minutes to put on this masking fluid, so I'm going to skip through the video on this first part just to get through it a little bit quicker. Feel free to pause this video if you need to at any time. Here's another optional step I'll throw at you while I've got the fluid out and my brush dirty. I think I actually might mask off a few of these little grassy leaves here at the bottom as well. My plan is to paint the background color over this entire area and then paint the leaves darker in value, but it might be a nice touch to have just a few of them lighter in value as well. As soon as you're finished with the masking fluid, go and rinse and wash out that brush so it doesn't damage the bristles. Then while we wait for the fluid to completely finish drying on our page, let's mix up some colors for the background wash. Take the larger number 10 and make a nice yellow-green color by mixing azo yellow with a little bit of sap green. Then we'll get some pure sap green here next. And maybe let's mix a blue-green as well by using some sap green and ultramarine blue. And lastly, we'll have some pure ultramarine blue. Then when the masking fluid is completely dry, we'll start applying some clean water to the background area. Now you can choose however you'd like to go about doing this. I'm choosing not to paint the water clear to the tape or the edges of the page. I want to have a more loose or rough outline of the color. So I'll paint the water close to, but not right up against the edge, then going around and in between the flowers, and I'm just going to paint right over the tops of the stems and the grass lines as well. One of the reasons the masking fluid can be so helpful in a painting like this is because I can move much more quickly, especially in small areas like in between the flowers. This gives me a chance to start putting in my colors before some of the water starts to dry, allowing for a better and smoother spreading and blending of the colors. Now, after I've got my water in position, I can start throwing in the colors. I'll work my way from light colors to dark. So I'll start with this yellow-green. I'll place that yellow-green in mostly around the outlying or outer edge areas of the page. Next, we'll blend in some of the pure sap green, maybe next to some of the yellow green to blend in a little bit, but I'm really focusing a lot of this color down here at the base of the page amongst the grassy area. I'm going to emphasize some of these shadows and dark spots amongst this grass now by adding in some of the blue-green. Of course, I do want to have some of this blue-green in a few other places as well, but I'll water it down a little bit more for some of these other areas so it's not quite so dark. I really want to keep the darkest part of this background down within the grass. And to finish off this background area, I'll throw some splashes of pure ultramarine blue in here. A lighter blue around the tops or sides, kind of like it's some blue sky shining through, but also maybe some darker blue, again within the grassy area to add one more level of depth in there. Now, as an option, if you'd like to fade out or soften some of these background outer edges a little bit, take your paper towel and gently dab it where you'd like to remove some of the water or color. All right, great job! That's a big portion of this painting now done. Now, before I move on to the next step, I'm actually going to quickly change out my water. Okay, now let's go ahead and paint in the grassy area next. So I'm going to start removing some of this masking fluid, but make sure that the background paint is completely dry first. You don't want to risk smearing or smudging all the work you've done so far. I'm just using an eraser and pulling or rubbing the fluid to take it off, whatever works best for you. Now, I'm only going to remove the fluid amongst the grasses. I'm still going to leave it on the flowers for now, just to help protect the flower edges from the paint I'm about to put on here, since several of the flowers overlap or touch the grass. All right, now for the grass. I'll actually be using a lot of these same colors that we've already used on the background. The key here is to use a variety of colors, so each blade of grass is slightly different than the one it's sitting right next to. I'm going to start by painting the grass that I just took the fluid off of. These should be the lightest valued grass on the whole page. So to help with that, I'm going to use the lighter green color, starting with some yellow green at the tip and then working down into sap green, or maybe even vice versa, whatever you think will look good. Maybe I'll try both ways and see which way I like. I'll add also that I'm just putting this color straight on here, wet on dry, without any water first. But if you're having trouble getting your colors to blend well, you definitely can paint the grass with water first and then add in the color. If you're enjoying my painting and teaching style tips and techniques, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on more of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. Okay, that's a pretty good start, I'd say. Let's do some more that are darker in value this time. In fact, the remaining leaves really should be painted a darker value than what we have in the background so they stand out and don't get lost back there. Just something to keep in mind. This time I'll use some color combinations such as the sap green at the tip and then moving down onto the blue green. I'll probably paint some of these a pure blue green color or even a pure sap green color with just lighter or darker, more watered down or more concentrated paint to give it some variety. I mean, your creativity can just flow right now. Experiment, try new and different combinations. Just make sure each blade of grass is a little unique or different compared to its next door neighbor. You'll also probably see me jump around a bit here and there while I wait for certain sections to dry before I paint right next to it so they don't bleed together. Now, while we work on this for a little bit, I have a sort of funny yet sad story about this painting. I started to think I was actually cursed to never paint this for a little while. So if you have watched my tutorials often, you might remember that during the week that I did the mini paintings, I said that I had a different painting actually planned for that week, but I just wasn't in the mood. Well, this was the painting that I was talking about. I have had the photo references for this painting for a whole year and finally got around to making the outline for it, which was actually like 2 or 3 months ago. I feel like I was just a little stuck. I wasn't sure how I wanted to paint it, so I kept putting it on the back burner to do. Well, I finally had 2 ideas on how I could paint this, and I was ready to try the painting style, which we're doing right now. But I guess I still hadn't worked it out in my mind the best way to actually produce what I had visioned. So when it came to be painting time, the week of the mini paintings, I just couldn't push myself to actually get going or give it a try. And it didn't even sound fun to do anymore. Basically, I think I was scared that I would mess it up or that it wouldn't turn out how I wanted. And so because of the doubts I was having, chose to do the fun mini paintings instead. Well, as time went on, the next week rolls around and I'm finally ready to take the plunge and give this painting a try. So I broke out the paints and bravely started working and recording. Well, long story short, somehow I got off in my recording settings, and when I thought I was pushing the button to record, I was actually pushing the button to stop recording. So I got halfway through this painting and came to find out the majority of what I had painted that far along didn't even get recorded. I couldn't believe it. I was so upset, and not being ready to turn around and start this all over again, I decided this painting was cursed and against me, and that is when I sat down and painted the second technique or painting idea that I had for this piece and painted the transparent version of this outline, which actually turned out great. So a few days later, I attempted this one more time, and that is the painting that you see now. And actually, the colors in the background turned out better in this one than the first one I did, so I guess it all worked out how it was supposed to in the end. Okay, that was a long story, so sorry about that. I just wanted to share the behind the scenes story that went on with this piece. It was quite a struggle to make it to the moment that you see today. All right, now that all the grass here is done, let's take off the rest of this masking fluid around the edges of the flowers really quickly. And then we'll finish off the rest of the green colored spots by painting in the stems and top area of the flower heads. Now for these sections, I am choosing to do it wet on wet, but of course you can do it however works best for you. So I'll wet down the top piece of the flower head and maybe even down the stem a little ways. Then I'll use some sap green and sort of paint it around the outer edges, letting the color spread into the middle area a little bit, making it a little lighter in value, creating sort of a highlight. I'll also spread this green down the stem. Then I'll come back in here while the paint is still a little wet and add in some of this darker blue-green color for some hints or variations and shadows. I'm kind of focusing this color a little bit more at the base area here and then on the leaves poking out at the top as well as down just one side, preferably the bottom side of the flower stem. I'll go ahead and paint each of these stems in a similar way. All right, the last thing we need to paint on this is the flower heads themselves. But before we paint them, I'm actually going to use a bit of this masking fluid one more time and paint the stamen or the circular spots on the inner part of the flower so that I can just paint the color right over everything and then be able to paint the stamen area a light yellow later. While we wait for the fluid to dry, let's mix up our colors for the petals. I'm actually going to just use this ultramarine blue color that's already on my tray, but I am going to lighten the value up by adding some extra water in here. Then I'll mix up a darker blue-violet color using some ultramarine blue mixed with some dioxazine purple. Not too much purple, I still want it to be mostly blue with just a hint of purple to it. We'll paint these petals working our way from the lightest petals first and then moving gradually onto the darker ones as we go. So let's paint this petal right here in the middle top area of the flower with just water first, and then we'll use the watered down light blue to paint around the edges of the petals as well as a couple of lines or stripes of color down the center area. You can leave this part just how it is now, or you can add just a slight hint of darker color right at the bottom of this to create a shadow look. Then I'll go ahead and paint this middle section the same way on each and every flower. I thought I'd pull out this reference photo really quick and kind of show you the look that we're trying to replicate a little bit, specifically the stripes that streak down the petals. All right, well done. Now let's paint the petal off to the left side of the first petal in the same way as before. The value for this should either be about the same or maybe even a little lighter than the first one we just did. Let's make this more of a highlighted side of the flower. Now, moving on to the right side of the flower here, we'll again paint it in the same way as we just did. But this time, let's make it a little bit darker in value than the first two by using either a darker or a more concentrated paint. All right, now let's start using some of this nice dark blue violet on the petals here at the bottom or underside of the flowers. I'll again start with water first, paint the color mostly around the edges where it should be a little bit darker, and then spreading it to the center area, but keeping it lighter in the center. Now, if you want, you can even leave some white unpainted spots to really emphasize this a little bit more. And as a side note, I am not really worrying about trying to paint stripes of color on these inner petals like we did on the outer petals. Now, the only petals left to paint are these petal tips that are at a slight curl. The trick with these is that they are right in between the light and dark valued petals. So, to help make them stand out here, we are going to paint them at a gradient of color by painting the top edges dark and then leaving the bottom part very light or even white. I may not have explained that very well, so I'll show you what I mean. But painting them this way gives us a direct contrast in value since the dark tip is touching the light valued flower tops and the light valued bottom area is touching right next to the dark bottom petals. To help achieve this gradient look, you can simply paint on the darker strip of color at the top, then rinse and slightly dry your brush off and use the damp brush to spread a little bit of that color down. All right, we only have one little finishing touch left and we can call this painting done. So let's quickly change out our water one more time so we don't taint the next color. We'll take off the masking fluid in the centers of the flowers. Again, make sure all the paint is dry before doing this so not to smear anything. Then I'll take a little bit of Gamboge yellow and paint in the center stamen area with spots of that color. And that's it for this lovely bluebell painting. Make sure you don't forget to join me next week when we will use this exact same outline to paint these bluebells using a completely different technique. And in fact, in many ways, this transparent one is probably a little bit easier and quicker than the one we did today. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.